Why do I always start? You start this one.
By the way, you should leave that in, that he's saying you start, what I always start.
I always start
because you always say to me,
we come out of the cold open and I'm the
star of the show.
I've never said that. I've never said that.
You feel that?
Yes, but I wouldn't say it. That's
okay,
rude.
Exactly. So here we go.
It's true, but it's rude.
I'll do you. Here we go. Ready, Laurie? Here's how Jason starts every episode. We have a very special episode today. This is special, and I go, why? And you go, I don't know, but I like calling it that.
You know, you make up crap about me all the time. A, I've never said that. B, I'm still reeling because you put out to America that I'm an underwhelming driver, and
wow, that was from episode 105.
I'm still hurting.
Years
I'm
ago.
still hurt by that. I'm still hurt by that.
All right, Mario Andretti.
You
all right,
spin fantasies around me.
Wow.
Really? No, really? Really? No, really? Really?
So this episode, there was another shocking, another incident of wine fraud. And I have been fascinated with wine fraud since I saw the movie Sour Grapes.
Yes.
Which was about the huge wine fraud that was exposed.
Not to be confused, by the way.
Not the Larry David movie.
Not the Larry David movie, right.
This was one where there's a wine fraud, and that one of the Koch brothers was scammed, and he hired a private investigator, and they found out that this guy was doing his own wines, and I think it was $20 million, $30 million. Auction houses didn't catch it. It was amazing. So with yet another wine fraud, we wanted to have on somebody who could kind of tell us what that world is about and why this fraud happens so often. And when you look up this person, they're it. Maureen Downey, over 20 years experience at this point?
Yeah,
yes, over 20 years experience, stands out as an independent expert on fine and rare wine, the foremost authority on counterfeit. And your name does come. It's like you're it. You're the big kahuna in this thing. They call you the Sherlock Holmes of wine, one of the 50 most powerful women in wine. She specializes in authentication and valuation. You have inspected hundreds of millions of dollars worth of wine, and you advise the top collectors, etc. So
and a graduate of Boston University.
Indeed.
Just to, where many people
look at my
have gone.
arms. I got nothing. I got no chills, no nothing. Great. Thank you.
Hi, Maureen. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
All right, so we got to ask about the wine fraud. So the big wine, what Sour Grapes was about, what's the guy's name?
So Rudy Kurniawan.
Okay. So my question about that and other things that we'll get to that are baffling about the credibility of wine and the pricing of wine, that was a giant fraud. Like $20 million worth or more?
Way more.
How much? How much?
So the restitution, and I did the reports for the DOJ that sent most of the restitution, but he owns over $28 million in restitution, but he sold at least $100 million worth of counterfeit wine.
So my question is
at the time of sale. Right. That's worth 10 times that today.
No expert picked this up.
That's not true.
Oh, it's not true? I thought that it was...
Good research, Peter.
Starting in 2002.
Yeah.
So I was in wine auctions in New York City. In New York City, auctions only became legal in 96. They started in 98. So I had been managing restaurants in New York and got out of restaurant management and started in the wine auction industry in 2000. So I was a friend of Rudy. And the guys at Acker and my first apartment in New York was on 72nd Central Park West. I was right down the street from the store, so I got to know. There was a small group of us in our 20s, but by 2002, I was running the new auction house at Zacky's, and Rudy decided that he wanted to be a player, and he tried to sell some wine with me. Now, one of the things that always baffled me was that. If a kid were to walk into an auction house with millions of dollars worth of jewelry, the auction house would be like, all right, prove to us that you own it. Where'd you buy it? And he never claimed that his parents were major collectors and this was their collection. So he had to have bought the wine, right?
Right.
So when he tried to sell this wine with us at Zacky's, I said, okay, show me receipts. And he couldn't come up with a receipt. And this is in 2002. So a couple of years later, he's selling $34 million in one 2-piece auction. And I'm like, why is nobody in the world freaking asking questions? Now, the thing is, did nobody know? Of course they knew. We knew in 2002. We knew that the guys at the auction house where he sold the wine were chandelier bidding and putting fake underbids in their book. It was an open secret. So, and don't talk to me about sommeliers. Like, really? Sommeliers do not, because you study wine does not mean that you know how to authenticate old and rare bottles. And even if you do know about old and rare wine, if you were to take a case of bottles and put them in a cellar in perfect condition, 12 bottles, and come back to them 50 years later, they're all going to be totally different. Think of triplets. Separate triplets at birth, right? Bring them back when they're 60 years old. They're not going to have a whole lot in common, right? So anybody that's like, oh, well, I can tell that that's counterfeit because I tasted it.
There's no way.
Bullshit. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I love you. See, I'm liking you already. I'm laughing because there was, and I'm telling you, you know all these stories, but I wanted to prepare. So Balthazar Restaurant, I read that there was an incident in 2002, I think, where a table full of executives, wine connoisseurs, ordered a bottle. And at another table was a couple celebrating like their first anniversary, and they ordered the cheapest bottle, which is $12 a bottle. And the restaurant accidentally mixed them up. And the table, of course, that got the $12 bottle, which was expecting this $2,000, I don't remember what it was, where they, it has this and it has a mouthfeel and it has a that and blah, blah, blah. And then when they pointed it out to the table, we'd made a horrible mistake. The head of the party went, I knew something was
I don't understand the story to begin with. If I've ordered a $2,000 bottle of wine, they don't bring the wine to the table
This
so
was
I can
more.
read that
I
it's
don't know
not
how-
Fleischmann's wine.
Right.
From how do you, they just let the guy pour and go, I assume this is from the $2,000 bottle? I don't understand the
I don't
story.
know how Balthazar-
I don't know how this could be.
That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, if I'm going to order an expensive bottle, bring it over to the table, open it at the table, pour it at the table.
Yeah.
I don't want any, because I know the shenanigans that can happen, right? Like, been reading about studying the shenanigans for quite a long time. So that, hey, but God bless the $12 bottle people.
Oh, they went out. They went
And
out
the
as
sommelier,
happy
the big
as could be.
fancy sommelier
didn't know.
didn't go over to the couple that knows he can see they're ordering, a la carte, and he's opening a $2,000
Right.
bottle of wine with and not questioning this whole affair.
Well,
this
and-
whole story is it? Let me
In
just tell you.
reality, the sommeliers in New York, some of them, one of whom is a huge part of this story, worked with me at Zacky's. He knew Rudy was a crook. But so I was also the only woman in the industry. And so when I left and came back to California, where I'm from, so I left in at the end of 2003 and came back to California. And by then, Rudy was already an open secret. And for some reason, all these guys went from like doing the right thing to wanting to be part of the party. And there was just, there was way too much money and way too little education. And these guys all wanted to believe, and it was Peter Pan in a bottle. Wow. And it was,
What a
but it was
fascinating-
also, it was lots of drugs. It was lots of hookers. Like it is,
This is the Wolf of Wine Street.
it is
basically.
100%.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of people were all in because they were benefiting in a big way.
Well, what's really weird is if you look at, so we have a website called winefraud.com that we started to educate people. And we put a lot of the Rudy Kurniawan evidence. So Bill Koch had a suit. So I said that Rudy was doing this in 2008 or in 2002. I started working with Bill's investigators in 2008 and with the FBI in 2008. We have an FBI agent, by the way, in California who's dedicated to wine fraud. Isn't that
How
crazy?
did he
Yeah.
get that job? That's
she.
a guy. She.
Right,
I
yeah.
want to know how she got that
Well,
job.
the wine is important enough to the GDP of the state of California that So I've been training them and working with them since 2008, and we've gotten a lot of good people behind bars.
So what about the tests when they do like the one test where they sent 3 of the same bottles of wine to be graded, and one was not acceptable, and one was great, and one was and it was the same wine?
So I'm a wine judge. I do like the International Wine
course you
Challenge in
do,
London and Texom and a couple other ones. And that can happen where one panel will throw a wine out and say it's no good, and another panel will give it a gold. So a lot of it has to do with the mood you're in, who you're with. If you're tasting with a bunch of people that are duds or you can't stand them or one of them is, annoying you or whatever, you can decide that wine isn't good. And another team who's getting along great is great. Like if they're playing jazz, my scores go down. If they're playing like 1980s alternative, my scores go way up.
Can I just say,
You know what? I'm so happy you're here.
Me too, because I went from I'm going to have nothing to talk to this woman about because I'm one of those people. I'm not a drinker. B, I can taste nothing. You give me a glass of wine, I'll go. Either it has a fruity quality or a dry quality. And people are talking about I taste this, I taste that. I go, I taste maybe a grape and a lot of alcohol. To me, this is all a fesso. This whole the tasting and these people that go, yes, I taste the oak, I taste the thing. I was in Israel. I know we're going to talk a little bit about the Israeli wineries, but years ago, and I was with a gentleman, an actor who was in the wine business as well. And we're in this wonderful, in the middle of the desert, this winery, and he's got 5 glasses, and we're all tasting, and I can't taste a goddamn thing. And he's tasting. I taste the. There's a hint of cherry in this, and I think this must have been in an oak cask because I'm getting some oak, and he's going from glass to glass. And on the 4th one, I go, can I take this one? I'm getting rattlesnake, and I think Shlomo may have urinated on this vine a week or so ago. And they're all laughing, and I'm going, but I might as well be talking the truth.
But realistically, you can study it. It is a language. So I've studied, I've been studying wine since I was 18. And, I studied for the Master of Wine. And in the Master of Wine, you need to be able to taste not only what grape variety or blend, where it's from, the vintage, the soil that it's grown in, but you need to say at what temperature it was fermented.
No.
Yeah. In what kind of vessel it was fermented and for how long. You can do it. It takes a long time, but you can do it.
No.
But dudes on Wall Street can't do that when they're in their 30s.
You can say this dry, arid soil, it was in
from
a
the
cask with yeast. The yeast was this. It was fermented in a Volvo, a 1987 Volvo.
Yeah, I mean, so like a lot of Sauvignon Blancs that are really have like really high acid and really primary flavors. Those have been fermented in a neutral vessel, so concrete or steel, and at a cold temperature with highly rectified yeast strains. It does. It actually.
You can tell. You're pretty good at telling. Wow.
Yeah. Can I just say something to you, Pina? I'm guessing it takes a hell of a lot to get this woman drunk.
Well, okay, so that's another thing.
I'm thinking she can hold a couple of bottles of wine.
You spit out. When you taste, you spit, right?
I am Irish.
Maybe you don't spit. No, but you spit. So I'm doing a morning show here way back. It was like the #1 morning show in LA, and it was with a guy who drank. And I really don't drink, not because I don't like to. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, I'll tell you about that because I did have one wine adventure. But he said we got to go to a wine tasting. And I went down to Orange County, and I'd never gone before to anything like this. And my wife and I are sitting at a table, and there's like 30 glasses in front of me because they're going to start pouring. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting next to this woman who is the wine expert for something. And I go, well, this is going to be really interesting. I'm going to learn a lot for her. She was crocked. About 10 minutes in, she's got her head on my shoulder.
Yeah, no, you got to spit.
It was really.
You got to spit.
You got to spit,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. But no, you do have to spit. And you got to drink a lot of water. And but I want to go back to something. You can tell the difference, even if you're not a drinker. So like when I do a wine 101 class, one of the first things I do is I go to the grocery store and get a bunch of different apples. And I cut the apples up. Even though they're all apples, they taste different. They have different texture.
Yes.
They have different amounts of acid. They have different, or like coffee, or like somebody who is a Coca-Cola drinker, if you give them a Pepsi, they're going to be like, WTF.
You bet. Yep.
Right? So even if you think, I can't taste, like my father used to always say, I can't taste wine. God damn, I put 2 glasses of wine in front of him every time he would go to the best one. He knew it.
Really?
So even though you don't think you can, I think it's more about learning the language of being able to wine taste.
But so many
and
things
training
affect
your
it.
palate.
But then again, like one after the other, where you say when they show price tags, the price tag affects how they taste the wine. That this is a better wine because it's got a higher price tag.
Right.
So the assumption is that I will tell you, I don't drink, I don't love wine. There's something about it. The tannins will give me a headache. It's not that I don't like it yet. There's a friend of mine who's a surgeon, and every time I go to his house, he's Italian. And they cook and they have family over or whatever. And every time he forces a wine on me, it says, Trace, this is a good wine. And I go, I don't want to. He gave me one time a Brunello. And the sky opened up and a ray of sun hit me. And I went, oh my God, I get it now.
Yep.
And I could not find another Brunello that tasted like that again. So I went to an Amarone. And that didn't taste like, and I gave up. I could never find that
Those
taste
are totally
again.
different creatures. I mean, you went
But
they're both
again,
vehicles, but like one is a tank and one is a Bugatti.
But I
Like,
can never find the Brunello again. I can never find. I bought a bunch of Brunellos and nothing tasted like that particular.
I'm sending you a Brunello because that was my dad's favorite wine too,
Brunello.
And I've had
and it's my boyfriend's favorite wine. So
And what
I've
is
got
it
a lot
about the
of
Brunello? So why would somebody who's not a wine drinker like me like the Brunello?
Well, Brunello is Brunello de Montalcino is what it is, and it's a very small area. It's one side of one hill in Tuscany, and it's only made from one particular clone of Sangiovese, and so it's very specialized. There's no crap Brunello de Montalcino; it just doesn't occur. So it's probably just that it was a really high quality wine. I bet you
terrific.
anything I could turn your mind around on wine with one like sit down tasting.
Well, I will say this. Now, I don't have a great palate. I mean, I'm the kind of guy, I'm drinking sour milk, and my wife goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "It tastes fine to me." We were in Maui years ago, and they were doing a great chef's meal. And we were seated at the table with the woman from the vineyard that had supplied the wines, and she was telling us about why she had selected any given wine for any given course. And I said, "I'm sorry, it's going to be lost on me. I can't taste any of this stuff." She said, "That's fine. I'm going to show you a trick." And what she did, and this was amazing to me. So she would say, "Take a sip of the wine before your appetizer." I did. And she goes, "Okay. Now take a bite of the food." I go, "Okay. Now take another sip of the wine." "Okay. Now take another bite of the food." And the difference in what I was tasting in the food was profound. Something that the wine did inside my mouth made different receptors fire because the taste of the food changed completely.
It's all chemical reactions.
That was magnificent to me, and that gave me some indication of how magical wine can be. But I truly, as far as I know, unless it is something like a port where I go, "Oh, that's very sweet,"
and then you fall over.
and then I fall over. I have a very. I think you and I would be working a very long time before I went, "Oh yes, this is from the southern part of France."
Well, how many things? Because I read in preparing for this that there's so many things people say they taste, but even the best palate cannot taste more than 3 or 4 things in a
I disagree
wine.
with that. Because that's impossible. Because so I have I'm actually allergic to alcohol. I learned this during the MW program. I know. So I have to blow my nose like crazy. I'm like, sorry, everyone. But I taste tactilely. So a lot of my perception comes from tactile. So like when you think of the difference between milk, think of cream, milk, and water, right?
Sure.
You can automatically know exactly what I'm talking about there.
Feels
Right.
in the mouth.
There's just different feelings. And then you just think of different textures. There's a difference between silk and burlap. And those are ways that I would describe tannin. So, the way that you approach tasting wine isn't just about the roses and the flowers and the, a fawn ran through the field after the dew, It's not really that. It is actually finding different things. But there have to be more than 3 or 4 because you've got aromas, which exist. These are
Right,
esters.
right.
You have, acid makes you salivate. Tannin pulls the saliva literally from your gums and dries your mouth out. Alcohol burns your mucous membranes. And you can perceive salty, bitter, sweet. Sweet sugar weighs heavier on your palate. So, right there, just tactilely, you've got more than 3 or 4. So
God, if you BS, you're so good. You're so good. And you make me, it's fascinating to hear. Do you go in a restaurant and watch people do stuff and go, "This is such bullshit over there"? Look at table 8. Where they're doing their whole deal.
when people smell corks, I always laugh. Like, why the hell are you going to smell the cork? Smell the wine. What's the cork
Why
going to
do
do?
you smell the cork?
You don't. Because you don't know what the hell
Okay,
you're
what
doing.
else? Give me other things people do to show off that's all nonsense. God, I love that. And the next time I'm with somebody with a cork, I'm going to go, "Schmuck, what do you smell the
Yeah.
What do you smell
No,
the
you
cork?"
Smell the wine.
And then I'm getting you on the phone to explain.
Exactly. You can feel the cork and see, if it's too hard or too soft, but don't smell the cork.
Yeah, what, are you going to eat the cork?
Right. It's the dumbest thing I ever saw. I just think that people who, people who wax and wane too poetic or sit there and spend too much time like, yeah, enjoy your wine, but shut up,
Just drink it.
Yeah.
It's a beverage.
Yeah.
So I looked up terms. Jason, are these real terms? And you say if they're real terms or not. Youthful.
A youthful wine? Yes.
Yes.
Umami.
Umami is when it applies to wine. Umami is supposed to be about like a sort of a meaty flavor.
Exactly.
I can't imagine it applies to wine.
Why?
Do you want
Saddle leather.
Do you want a meaty flavor in your wine? You do?
Like a nice coat roti.
You're a little bit of a freak, I can say. Drinks a lot, never gets drunk, and likes leather in her wine. I don't know.
Salmon.
Salmon? No.
It's a color.
There you go. I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought this was all
All
about
right, don't touch me.
taste.
Don't hit me. Don't hit me. Velvety.
Velvety, I've heard, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nutty.
Nutty, I've also heard.
Intense.
Sure.
Jammy.
Jammy?
Jammy.
That's what I put on when I taste my wine.
Is it jammy?
Jammy.
Yeah. A lot of New World wine is jammy.
And
Really,
what does that
really
mean?
sweet
What's-
fruit, like
Ah.
cooked fruit.
Uh-huh.
Tempting. Is it descriptor?
Tempting? I guess.
Cerebral?
Cerebral?
They call wine
Okay.
cerebral.
If you call wine cerebral, that's like, this really sucks, but I have to think about it a lot. That's like trying to find something nice to say.
Yeah.
Contemplative.
Same thing.
So these are real terms, but they're bullshit.
Well, if you're a winemaker and somebody's like, your wine is very cerebral, like, I don't want you to be, I want you to see it's delicious.
Deep.
Deep, yes. Deep is
Color.
a good color, yeah.
What I found is that the descriptors tend to be pretentious. And that's a turnoff too, because
yeah.
that adds to the snobism of the wine. When I read I really looked up some descriptions that were so stupid that I mean, with an enthralling, seductive wine, with an oak, and you're going, what are you talking about?
That's a jackass that can't write a good wine tasting.
Yeah.
There you go.
Can I ask a question
Thank
about the sort of the other end of this thing? So I was watching a little bit of Bill Koch was being interviewed by this, and it was about the Thomas Jefferson bottles, the faux John
Yep.
Thomas. But if I had,
They're all faux, by the way. There's no real Thomas Jefferson.
there
bottles.
isn't.
No.
Okay. Is there a bottle of wine from that year that if I opened it today would taste the way you want it to? I mean,
no.
I was gonna. I mean,
Totally
there's-
gross.
You would never drink a bottle of wine that. What's like
So
the
there-
cutoff? Is
you know,
if
I
it's
gotta
more
tell
than
ya.
X years, don't drink it. Just look at it as a piece of history.
So if there happened to be somebody who was working on the show who could Google things, maybe they might be able to look this up. But there was some ancient wine that was found in the Middle East, actually in the Levant, so Israel, Lebanon-ish. And it had been topped with olive oil because that's what they used to use right before corks, because olive oil keeps the
seal it,
oxygen out.
sure, yeah.
And they found it, and then they tested the liquid, and it was still like safe to consume,
Right.
but it was nasty.
Oh, bad.
But so is that basically with the Koch brother?
So
is that
the Koch
because he
brothers
can-
are Bill's brothers. So
Oh.
Bill has the when you talk about the Koch brothers,
Yeah.
those are his two brothers.
Yeah.
So Bill's separate.
So when you talk about the Koch from the
Bill Koch.
movie,
Bill
film,
Koch.
is that basically just so you can say I have this bottle that is not about consumption? It's about
It's like
historical.
buying history, right?
So here's a really interesting thing about counterfeit. So prior to Rudy Kurniawan, there was a very famous counterfeiter named Hardy Rodenstock. And Hardy Rodenstock was big in the 80s and the 90s. So he's where I learned about counterfeits. And Hardy Rodenstock made counterfeits that were not only to counterfeit wine, but they were all important years, like 1864, 1865, end of the Revolutionary War, the year that Abraham Lincoln. So somebody like a Bill Koch, who collected wine and Americana, is going to go for those kinds of years. So, when I teach people about how to authenticate, like these important years for the world are something that you look for, because people who collect wine, somebody, Sotheby's or Christie's, spent a lot of money and established that people who collect wine are the most likely to collect something else, at least something else. So people who collect
Very
wine
smart.
rarely only collect wine.
Doing art, they're doing historical stuff. Wow.
Right. So Bill Koch was collecting Americana.
Right.
So for him, that was part of Americana. And it was realized because his Americana was going to the Elizabeth Gardner Museum in Boston, and they're the ones that fact-checked it. But it was interesting. I'd been trying to get a hold of him since 2006 for Rudy Kurniawan bottles that he bought that I knew were just fake as could be. So
And he never responded?
no, but I ended up testifying about them in court for him.
So When you're looking at a bottle of wine, whether it's historic BS or whether it's a real date from way back, can't you do authentication of the label, the bottle, how bottles were made at that point, where they were made at that point?
That's exactly what I do. So, and people are always like, well, do you test the liquid? I'm like, no, because if you test the liquid, if it's a $20,000 bottle and I'm testing the liquid, now what? And or
although they have a thing called a rabbit, and you can only even have to open the core. I know about wine.
Look at this. Wait a minute. Listen. Thanks for your contribution.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. The expert.
Carry on with your thought. I just thought you might not be aware.
Cut me up.
You might not have been aware.
Thank you for that, Jay. Wow.
It's my pleasure.
Wow, thank you.
I like to contribute.
but nobody can. How do you test that? I mean, you got to have a control. So how many controls of 1945 Mouton are there? There's a lot of counterfeit bottles out there, and allegedly somebody peed in the vat. FYI.
Ooh.
Of the real wine.
Wow.
Pissed off worker.
Does that make it more valuable or less? Less valuable. How much fraud is that? What do you think in the wine world?
So, according to the WHO, more than 25% of all alcohol consumed in the world is illicit. So, about 20% of all of wine is counterfeit. In the fine and rare sector, in the upper, echelon, we're looking at about 10%. And what's interesting is that, when we authenticate a bottle, we look at the glass and the paper and the glue. Does the paper react to UV light? Because if so, you can date it to a particular time. But in the wake of the Rudy Kurniawan fraud, most producers in the world went away from plate-pressed labels to digital labels. And unfortunately, organized crime can buy a digital printer fairly cheaply. So now we've just got, and if they get caught making counterfeit wine, nobody really cares. If they get caught human trafficking, they're going to go to jail. So organized crime has gotten into the game, and so the world of counterfeits has actually gotten worse, not better.
So there's a Screaming Eagle wine. It now has an interactive authentication code that you type in or a phone number to call, and it's so you can be. I mean, does that work? I mean, what
I'm this
are
close to the
companies
bottle,
doing? Yeah,
I already own it.
Right.
I have a problem in my hand, not an investment. So I've been working on a Web3 blockchain solution where people can actually get the information online prior to sale, whether it's a primary sale or a secondary market sale, and the producers can actually track through the supply chain. The wine supply chain is one of the most opaque in the world. Because everybody's secretive, the supply is so limited and the demand is so great. I mean, they are never going to make more bottles of the wine that they can. If a vineyard is as big as this room, it's never going to get bigger. That by law, they can't grow it, especially in the old world. So, supply is static and demand is growing. So the supply chains have gotten totally opaque. The gray market is huge. So producers can't even control where their bottles go. And anything that you can scan on a label just substantiates a counterfeit refill. So, people are collecting empty bottles and refilling them and reselling them. So we gotta address the solution before people actually buy. Nobody goes to the wine store and says, okay, I'm going to spend $50,000 today. They do it from behind a desk, They do it on the phone.
So with organized crime involved now in a bigger way, does it make your job tougher or scarier or more fraught with problems?
It is interesting. We found a rattlesnake in our house in Sonoma the other week, 2 weeks ago. And it was right after I made a post about Rudy's back in business.
In your house?
In the pantry on a high shelf.
Wow.
Crazy, right? Apparently.
Back up. You were going in for some Triscuits. You opened the thing and there's
my niece she was going in to turn the light. Her mom had gone in and put something in the pantry. They had just gotten to the house. It's a family home in Sonoma. Closed the door, but she left the light on. Gabrielle went in to turn the light off and heard the rattling. And my boyfriend's a bit of a prankster. He's a Boston guy, hockey at Northeastern. So the bean pot's good in our house. And they immediately started calling, like, tell us that rattlesnake is a prank. And I'm like, not a prank. Close the door.
Yikes!
Call 911. We're on a big piece of land, but in 25 years, we've never seen a snake there. So things like that make me wonder. I have been physically assaulted, so.
Really?
Yeah. And, if I'd have just put my shoulder down. I could have taken the guy out, but
Does it concern you? Does it? Do you have to?
I take bodyguards to some big tastings. But hey, when my time's up, my time's up. I'm just gonna keep doing what I do.
Wow, that's pretty cavalier.
Cover me. I'm interviewing Maureen.
Yeah.
Wow, Maureen. That's frightening.
Anecdotally, you and I may be now on the list.
Because I'm not still doing mine.
Because I gave an open forum, so let's get some other people in here to point counterpoint kind of thing. Maureen,
wow.
Is there truly... Is there a difference I should care about between a $30 bottle of wine and a $200 bottle of wine? What is there truly a value difference, an experiential difference that justifies that change in price, or do you get just as much joy from? Is everything you're going to get from the $200 bottle available in a $30 variety?
So, a car will get you from point A to point B. Whether you're going to spend,
And so for someone who's looking for that experience, the price is absolutely justified.
100%.
Okay.
So knowing you're coming in, I looked at what future trends are in wine, and what I read, they're not accurate, is that the price point, $25 to $35, is about where everything's heading. That's the sweet spot for wine, and that the big problem in the wine industry, and we can talk about this in a bit, is drought and where things have to move and how it has to adjust. But the big point is you guys have 50 plus market share, 65 plus market share. But teens and young adults are drinking all kinds of alternate drinks that are being fed them in a big way. Wine spitzers, other kind of
Hard
drinks,
seltzer.
kombucha, seltzer, hard cider stuff.
Yeah.
And that you're having a real hard time marketing to them because they didn't grow up in a world with the sommelier thing and the dinner. That's just not experiential to them. How do you reach out to the next generation and co-opt them into loving and buying into the whole experiential thing,
Well, I do think it kind of swaps generation to generation. I mean, if you look at, baby boomers' parents were spirits drinkers, and then baby boomers drank wine, and then, Gen Xers, we're kind of in between, and then, these guys, they also don't drink a lot. Like, the kids in college today, I don't know what's wrong with them. They're just not drinking. Yeah. But, I think that we need to find better ways. The problem is they want experiences,
Right.
So, and that's one of the things with NFTs and, making one of the things that we've done with our solution is making it possible for a producer to have direct contact with the consumer. So if the consumer has the bottle and they burn the bottle, and then the producer can say, "Oh, I saw that you had your anniversary celebrating, with our wine. When you're in town next, we'd love to have you visit the winery. Or we're going to be in your city and we're going to have a wine dinner. Please come. Or I see that you have 10 vintages of our wine, but you're missing 3. Here's a direct." So I think if we can figure out how to get the producers and the consumers in more direct...
To make an experiential... Well, it's
Yeah.
funny that one of the articles I read mentioned Portlandia, because there was a skit in Portlandia where they sat down at a table, like at a free-range restaurant, and said, the chicken, where is it raised? And then they went out to see this. They pushed their chairs and said, "We'll be right back." And they ended up 8 months on a commune trying to find out the chicken. So, but in today's world, 20-somethings want to know, where is it grown? Is it how's it grown? What are you doing to the environment? Do you pay your workers the right wage?
Right.
Do you pay for insurance for the worker? And on and on and on. Environmentally, whatever. Because that's part of the experiential thing. So how do you do that transparency?
So there's a lot of the fine wine industry that's really based in London, even though France is where a lot of the wine is made, or Italy. They kind of couldn't get their business acumen together. The Brits had to do it for them. So historically, that's one of the reasons that London is the kind of the king of the trade. But they've been, we've been talking about fair trade and organic and biodynamic and, worried about water and stuff in the wine industry for a lot longer than other industries. So that's already kind of baked in as a huge part, especially outside the U.S., like in Australia. I mean, Australia has droughts and fires and
Right.
and such. So I think when it comes to industry, we're kind of ahead of the game there. But if we can put, if you can put an NFT on a bottle and people can see or even like a virtual reality one, where 20 years from now, when you're drinking that wine, you can be in the vineyard with the winemaker, and they can be talking about why they chose to blend that way that year.
And it's experiential.
Right.
That's very smart.
Yeah.
And what about when you say outside of the country? It's interesting because I saw that China, it's funny, they said the Chinese don't drink like we do. Maybe where we drink X amount of bottles a year as Americans, they drink 2 or 3 drinks a year as Chinese, but that's changing. And with that population, if they can get it up by 3 more glasses per person, that's a gazillion bottles of wine. Are they making advances into the global wine market? Are they making a great product?
Well, they're making advances in a million different ways. I mean, first of all, they're making a lot more wine. You know, they've been the largest producers of brandy forever. They are huge spirits drinkers. The real thing is getting the Chinese to transfer over from spirits to wine. So a lot of times you'll see Chinese drinkers and they just do shots. Even though it's wine, they'll just, they just do shots the whole time because they're used to, doing shots of booze. But they're making wine. They are, China, Hong Kong is probably going to surpass, if it hasn't already. I think I read an article today that I'm in about the fact that Hong Kong is now considered the fine wine capital of the world.
There you go. There you go.
That's where all the money is.
Wow. That makes sense. Makes sense.
I have to say, I don't know if you know this, Peter. We have a very healthy crop of grapes in my backyard. What am I doing? I don't know. What do I have to do?
Wait a minute.
Get
Are
a
you
bucket.
really pitching your own vineyard?
Start squashing.
I probably got enough to make a dozen bottles.
Can we make some money on his backyard?
What I mean is
Probably.
you can't just take any old
Toe
grape
jam?
and make a wine. I mean, I'm sure there's a whole chemistry to what you put in the soil, how you but I mean, can anybody just take their backyard grape and crush them and go, whippy, I made a wine?
Yeah. I mean, they do it in prison. They call it hooch, but yeah.
If they can do it in prison, they can do it in your backyard.
Well, then I've got a leg up.
So last night I'm sitting watching something on one of the streaming channels that has Freeview, but they do commercials, and I see Bon Jovi. It's so that it was today coming in. Bon Jovi and his son, aside from the vintner, the celebrities all have their wines and their liquors and whatever. Bon Jovi and his son have it's called Hampton's Water, I think, Hampton Water.
I have no idea.
But it's a wine. It's like a rosé something or whatever. These celebrities that get into spirits and into wines.
Oh, I'm very good friends with a guy who's.
Because I'm thinking about doing your limited
Well,
edition.
there you go.
Limited edition right here.
Yeah,
Do they-
my buddy Brian Cranston has one of the top mezcals in the.
There you go. Do they do really? Is there a celebrity wine that does really well?
Miraval, Rosé,
Who owns that? Is that
Brad Pitt, and Angelina Jolie.
that does really
I've
well?
heard of them.
Yeah, if
It's
they
a
do
big-
well enough that they get counterfeited.
How's the Coppola?
Do they really get? They get
Oh,
counter-
Coppola is great.
Yeah, that's
mean-
what I did when I buy from the house. That's
All right.
All right. Let me ask you.
Yeah.
So when you do a Coppola, he has are those his personal vineyards, like on his property type thing?
Yeah, I know.
So
Francis
how many
Ford Coppola's
bottles?
been very
So
big.
how many bottles? I always look at vineyard. Like when I go to another country, my wife and I'll see a vineyard, and it looks like a hillside with the stuff on there. How many bottles of wine can you grow there to make it worthwhile? How much land do you have to produce enough bottles that you're making money and it's profitable?
Well, I mean, it depends where there is. I mean, Romane Conti is a tiny vineyard, but those bottles hit and they sell wholesale for $8,500 each, and as soon as they hit the market, they're $28,000. So you can make So I mean, I don't know.
So Jason's backyard.
You could have-
Jason's backyard. How much?
You could have some JA estate.
Yes. Now you're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what's reserve? When you hear a reserve wine, what's the difference?
It depends on where you're talking about. So in the United States, reserve does not have a legal meaning. And so Italy has 20 different regions. Each one of those. So Brunello di Montalcino is in Tuscany. It's one of the many regions of Tuscany. Reserva in Brunello di Montalcino means something different than Reserva would mean in Spain. So it depends, and different in Champagne, different. So sometimes it means 2 years, sometimes it means, and is it time in the bottle or time in the cask? So these are all the laws that we have to log.
I got to tell you, I am an expert in nothing to the extent that this woman knows.
I know.
You could ask me about what I've been doing theater since I was.
And still couldn't do it this
fetus.
way.
I could not speak
I can
to it.
smell a Beckett play without the first word being uttered. I can smell that he's doing a Beckett play. So when did you decide? You said you're 18 is when you decided to do this?
At BU, as a freshman, I started studying wine, and then as a sophomore, I was living in Belgium, and we did a 4-unit course through Champagne, Burgundy, and the Loire.
That was a popular.
And your parents said what?
And then, well, hey, it worked out, right? And then, I kept studying after school. My junior year, we won the Kevin Zraeli's Windows on the World Wine Challenge. So 4 women and with a female coach. We walked in, everybody laughed, but we won. I was 20. So there used to be this great wine bar in Soho, the Soho Kitchen. So this is 1993. So not 21. But our coach didn't care, so she took us and we got to drink all sorts of stuff we'd been studying and had never tried. Then when I graduated from college, I kept studying. And actually, when I was 23, I took the advanced Master Sommelier exam. But I was living in Deer Valley, Utah, and I had been midnight sledding with a bunch of cute Austrian boys. And I wiped out my ankle, so I was on crutches. So I couldn't take the service part, but I took the tasting part. And one of the Master Sommeliers said, he told me I had one of the best natural palates he'd ever seen. I was moving to New York or Las Vegas. Which one did I choose? And 3 weeks later, I was a manager at Tavern on the Green.
Yeah.
Really? Really? No, really. That's
Really?
pretty wild.
Really?
So in your world, though, because there's so much BS and because there is so much snobism, when you come into a place, and now you've reached a level where I'm sure there's respect and people know who you are because you've been doing it a long time, but isn't there always the person who's, oh yeah, she don't know. I mean, it's got to be a really difficult world where everybody's territorial and you don't know shit and they do know stuff and how come this and how do you navigate that?
So it was really a fun example of that is there's a tasting group down here in LA, and it's a white Burgundy group. And I was the first woman ever to attend. So I came down and it's all these, crusty old guys. And this is starting like 15 years ago. And, they're like, why is she here? Who is she? People don't know, they're like, whose date are you? And I'm like, no, I belong here. And by the end of the dinner, everybody wanted my opinion because I knew which producers used 20% new oak versus 40% new oak and, what the soil composition of that vineyard was or versus that vineyard. So, I'm good at authentication and I'm good at wine because I have a little bit of OCD and a photographic memory, and those things tend to go really well for wine.
So with a photographic memory, is there a taste memory too? Like if I say to you,
it is.
What's the best vanilla you've had? Does the taste come up in your head also along with the sense of it?
Yeah, and a lot of it is shapes. You know what it's very reminiscent of is, and people use the same part of the brain. If you're reading something and you can sense the influence, or if you listen to music and you can hear the influence of other musicians or even like, in Neil Diamond, you can hear a lot of classical music. I'm a Neil Diamond fanatic. A lot of classical music, influence. It's the same thing when you're blind tasting. You're finding the influences and then putting them
So you'll
together.
say, oh, wow, this reminds me of that and that, and that they're so distinct for you?
And then it triangulates, yeah.
That's really fascinating.
The people who are getting ripped off for the most part in this are getting ripped off because they're able to buy extremely luxurious. They're in a luxury market for the most part, are they not?
No. So the people that make me really sad are like this guy in Copenhagen, and I went out and he'd been collecting for like 20 years, and he had collected all of the major vintages of his father's life. Mm-hmm. The year he graduated from college, the year he met his mother, the year he got married, each one of his siblings' birth years. And they were going to take those bottles back to the producer and enjoy them with the producer. And most of them were counterfeit. And so he was not robbed of money. That's not the important part. He was robbed of that experience.
I feel like, and I felt a little of this watching some of the documentaries, where I went, listen, I'm not happy that these people are being ripped off. I don't condone that at all. But I'm also kind of like caveat emptor, man. I mean, you're. when I hear somebody is out 48 million from their bogus wine purchases, I go, well, you know what? Maybe that 48 million could have gone to some other things.
Well, and also, at the point that you're getting ripped off for $20 million, like, dude, get an expert.
Yeah.
Like, would you really buy that much art
But
without asking an expert?
Sure.
Let's leave.
Come on.
Usually, what we do after the guests is expand the topic a bit. We're going to go to fashion and luxury, but we'll do it with you here. So, art, same thing as far as authenticity. But what's really interesting is I was going to compare it to the fashion industry, and I started wondering why people buy luxury. And luxury now has expanded to blenders and cookware, and the luxury market has exploded. Almost 30% of people who buy luxury make under $50,000 a year and can't afford it. It's about accomplishment. It's about status. It's about a lot of stuff. And luxury means you don't have to have it. But through influencing, and et cetera, in the world today, they convince you that there is a need, okay, as far as social status, et cetera. So these luxury items sell for people who can't necessarily afford it. And they want it because of the authenticity and how it makes them feel. There's that endorphin connection, which is really amazing.
And that's certain people. And what's interesting is that there was a very interesting study done in Australia. And women who wear fake bags and fake watches tend to cheat more often.
Because it's not about authenticity. Yes.
Correct.
And the weird thing about that, then you look at the role models that these people look at. Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, all these guys wear T-shirts, jeans, and hoodies. So the wealthy are about access and power.
Yeah, they probably got $40,000 watches on
They're
them.
not showing off this stuff. So the brands, I forget what the brand, the number one brand now with the Arnold, whatever, is the biggest company in the world.
LVMH?
LVMH is the biggest company in the world. He's worth $486 billion because people want to buy crap that elevates their perception, that elevates them, and there has to be an authenticity to that, which is really, it's amazing.
Correct.
But the women who cheat, it makes sense based on everything I've read about why people buy.
I have an interesting vantage point because my wife used to work for a very high-end fashion design company. And in fact, part of her job was, colors would come in and they'd have to name the color. It can't be a blue. It can't be a blue sweater. It has to be a coral dream, or it has to be a whatever.
Well, you have somebody who can look up new terms
Right,
now
exactly.
for you.
But, I know from her experience in that, a sweater it would cost them $80 to bring it into the studio, and it would go out to retail at $3,000, and I go, who buys a $3,000? Now, as a sweater, I go, maybe there's a sweater that is, if it's really a great looking sweater and you need a sweater, but there are fashion. I see high end. We all see the fashion shows where every outfit up on that runway is like thousands and thousands of dollars, and there are 9 people in the world that can wear it because it looks like
Well, half of it nobody can wear. I mean, do you see the one where like people are wearing people like?
But those are statement stuff. And the really interesting thing I want to say before we go on this topic, though, the really interesting is young people under 30, though, with fashion now and brands. There's a secondary market. There's a resale market. So there's a whole other element to that we never had before, where you can get something, buy it, and then flip it and make money on it, whatever. Let's go to Googleheim, though, and see if Googleheim looked up your the stuff that you kind of threw out there and said, maybe you'd have a guy who could Google this.
Yeah.
Googleheim? Look at his eyes.
no, we can't hear you, David.
I love how David gives all this instruction to every one of our guests how to use the Zoom.
No,
I can't hear. Can't hear.
Not yet.
Can't hear. Still can't. Oh no, it's not your fault. It's our fault here. Here you go.
I think it's
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Now you're up.
I blame Lori.
So quick to blame.
Of course. Well, we got a lot to talk about, actually, so I'll be as quick as I can. As she said, there is a 1,700-year-old wine bottle, sealed, still drinkable, and actually not from Israel. It was discovered in a tomb of a Roman noble in Speyer, Germany, in 1867. So, but it is, in fact, there was the wine, the olive oil, as we said, and then there was wax.
And they say
I got it halfway.
They expect it to be nutty.
And how do they know it's still drinkable? How do they know?
You gonna prove them wrong?
There's actually a debate going on whether they should open it up and and try it, or just deal with whatever. But
Again, I say the rabbit. They go right through the oil, right through the cork, right through the wine.
Jason, she already said that's idiotic. Leave it alone.
That
Leave it alone.
would ruin
what
the
does she
bouquet.
All of a sudden, you're a vintner. You got your backyard grapes.
The rabbit.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now,
David.
okay, so we settled that, and far be it for me to back up Peter, but Peter is 100% right with the Balthazar story, at least according to the New York Post, and I think decanter.com. I'm hoping that's more
Decanter.com.
I thought that was a totally different site. I really thought that was where you go when you have a bar mitzvah training.
High holiday services.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
yeah.
Yeah. So apparently,
doesn't
My
get
bad.
wine-
My
wine
bad.
news.
I misread.
it was a $2,000 mouton.
Rothschild.
There you go.
1989.
Rothschild. There you go.
Yeah. And they had put that and the $18 wine in identical decanters, so they didn't have the bottles to compare. And of course, it was.
Don't doubt me, Jason.
Nobody noticed until
But that couple, the young couple who got it.
I'm telling you, whatever
very happy.
schmuck orders
Bravo
a
for them.
$2,000 bottle of wine and accepts it at the table in a decanter. Okay.
Because you would never get
All
your
right.
you'd never get your $2,000 bottle of wine in the decanter.
No, the deal is you don't decant like anything unless it's brand new. Like who
Ah,
decants
look
wine?
at that. So how did Balthazar, one of the top restaurants, not know that, or is that their shtick?
Can you
I'm
hear?
not gonna get
Can
in
you
a fight
hear?
with
Okay,
Can you
oh,
hear what the
oh.
eye roll is saying?
No. She's
Because
saying
it's saying it loud and clear.
She's saying I don't know more rattlesnakes on shelves. I don't need. I don't need.
Yeah.
I got it. I got it.
Also, Mark Zuckerberg's hoodies actually cost about $2,000.
Yeah, but it doesn't have logos on it.
Yes, but there's still 2,000.
I understand, but other people who are buying luxury
It's a
want the
labor
logos.
fee to not put a logo on. You're paying for the labor.
Right. It's in the inside.
And one more thing, and I'll get out of your way.
And I'll, wait. I love that he's part of the show, and then I'll get out of your way like he's an
you
imposition.
rap for me. You always rap for me. You're like, okay, thanks.
You know what?
I'm like,
Can I just say something?
Yeah, I
Can I
know.
just say something?
I know.
I don't want to say it while we were
You'll
late.
notice I never do that to you, David. It's only him.
No, you're my advocate.
And that's because
Thank you.
Laurie's making a face at me like I'm gonna wrestle you to the ground if you keep talking.
Yes, she does that. She
And this is a happy show behind the scenes. Argue in front of our guests, Maureen. This is like company's over.
Let the man talk.
This is
Would
like
you,
your
for
house
God's
going up.
sake?
Company's over. Don't show them who we really are.
No, I backed her up. One of the first known wine was made over 9,000 years ago, and guess where it was?
Bayonne, New Jersey.
Livingston, New Jersey.
Well,
The oranges.
Yeah, right. Everything old is new again. China. Now, of
Sure.
course, there are no bottles or anything like that of drinkable wine left, but there was, vessels or whatnot.
Yeah.
And
It was a cookie.
It was a mixed fermented drink of rice, honey, and hawthorn fruit or grape.
That
So
actually sounds very
Wow.
good. That sounds quite nice.
Well, and historically, here's a fun one too. Wine fraud. Pliny the Elder wrote about wine fraud in 70 AD because he was a rather connoisseur, and he heard his friends waxing and waning poetic about Falernia, that they thought they were drinking Falernia, which was the hottest wine of the day.
Sure.
But he knew that what they were drinking was not Falernia.
So the beginning of
this
wine
is-
fraud. First documented
this is-
wine
yeah.
fraud.
Look
First
at
one.
that.
All
Can
right,
I just tell you?
I want to do one more. I
Yeah,
want to do
go
one more,
ahead, babe, please.
because now I'm in a competition with
Yeah.
The oldest verifiable brewery, which was actually found near Haifa in modern day Israel, was a 13,000-year-old beer. That here's the interesting thing about this is because that they discovered the fermentation process and they could make this, they believe that this might have led to the first organized attempts at agriculture. So the desire to create an alcoholic beverage led to farming. So there you go.
See?
I don't
Look at
doubt
Maureen.
that.
Look, that's
Toast
another,
to that.
So Maureen
I
got
don't
a
doubt
story
that.
out of this.
I
that
love
you did-
that.
you didn't
Yeah.
know.
Here is all I want to say. Do you collect any luxury items? Are you a luxury purchaser?
No.
No, neither am I.
I'm wearing a logo that says really, no, really.
I
okay?
understand.
No.
Polyester.
Here's why I think
Polyester.
all of this stuff. I think it's never the value of the thing. It's only what we attach to the thing.
Of course it is. That's all it's all about.
I just had an epiphany. Don't say of
Oh,
course
God.
it is. That was I'm
Excuse me. Wait. Pretend I didn't. Edit that out. Not really, but go ahead.
Yeah. So my parents, when I was a young man, had a painting in our home that absolutely everybody was fascinated by, drawn to. It was about a 2 foot by 3 foot painting on paper. It was an abstract piece. It had a kind of an oriental feel to it in that it almost looked like letters of some Asian language. It was a beautiful sort of electric cobalt blue that it looked like the artist had drawn a palette knife or some sort of implement into. And people would ask, who was the artist? Where did you get this? What was the value? And my parents would talk about that they had this in an auction house. It was actually one of the most expensive items they'd ever bought, that it was a young and unknown artist. And they would go on and on and on, and people would not only be interested, but on some occasions would say, if you're ever willing to part with that, I'd be willing to buy that. You know, and this was a finger painting I did in kindergarten of my house and the tree in the backyard that my parents would spin this horseshit about. And nobody didn't think that it had the value that they said.
And there was one of my favorite things in Spy magazine was they had little kids duplicate the works of masters, rented a gallery, showed the kids' picture in Spy magazine next to the comments made by people in the gallery, and you just laughed your ass off because the depth of character, the pain that this, and it's a 9-year-old with teeth missing and freckles. So people project, look, we feel like we need expertise. There's chaos in the world. We need experts because experts make us feel better about the chaos. They assign all kinds of stuff and rules, etc., to make more sense. I was ready, like I said,
We can also save you a lot of money, though.
And you can save, and you were really, I got to tell you, Maureen, you were really impressive because we were ready. We didn't want to.
You also could have waived me. Here's how you could have saved me money. And this happened to me within the last 2 years. I give business gifts at the end of every year at the holiday time. So I knew my lawyer, my attorney, enjoyed a nice wine. So I signed him up for a wine of the month. You know, these were like $50 bottles of wine, $60 bottles of wine. I'm going, oh, he's going to be thrilled by this. I finally go to his home for dinner. He has a wine with like racks of $1,000 bottles of wine. And he never, he was so sweet. He goes, oh, that was such a lovely gift. Thank you. Really, I don't know if he...
Because 90% of
he used it to clean his oven. I don't know what...
The 90% of those he bought from Bill Koch on the marketplace, and they were frauds. So,
but Maureen, you could have waved me off of that whole purchase.
His wife made a nice stew.
Yes, absolutely. Exactly.
Amazingly impressive about that world and knowing the world. And there's so much more to it than just assigning value and the BS that goes along with it. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I should mention, though, that when
I would say we'd go out and pop a cork, but
when you add names and stuff, Jason and I did a thing for food workers that we said, you know, a cheese sandwich, guys, you got to call it an Elon Musk. Yeah. And with tomato, it's a Danny DeVito. Right. You gotta play stuff up. So it is interesting to see how much nonsense there is in your world.
That's why the Coppola wine is worth something, because it's a Coppola.
Exactly. I'm waiting. I'm investing in the
Where's the Paul Newman wine?
In the Bon Jovi. In the Bon Jovi.
Get the Bon Jovi?
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And let's give it over to our certainly drunk announcer.
And as I always say, if you had about half as much fun as we had doing this, then we had twice as much fun as you had listening.
You do always say that. And I wish you'd stop.
As another episode of Really No Really comes to a close, I know you're wondering, who are the largest consumers of wine? Well, I'll give you the answer in just a moment, but first, let's thank our guest, Maureen Downey, the Sherlock Holmes of wine. Follow Maureen Downey on Instagram at X at MOEVino, and on the web at chaiconsulting.com and winefraud.com. You can find us online at reallynoreally.com. Hit that subscribe button and tick that bell so you're updated when we release new videos. And thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing the show. We release new episodes every Tuesday, so make sure to follow us on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And now, the world's largest wine consumers per person are reportedly the residents of Vatican City, with each person drinking around 19.5 gallons per year. Didn't know that the College of Cardinals was big on ragers, but you learn something new every day. Really No Really is a production of iHeartRadio and Blase Entertainment.